I fell in love with the man in the window across from mine before I ever heard his voice, before I even realized he couldn't hear mine. Boston had a way of feeling both alive and lonely at the same time. I moved into my little corner apartment overlooking the courtyard, my easel tucked into the window so I could paint the city waking up beneath me. The sun hit the brick walls just right in the mornings, and sometimes I'd forget everything else existed except the brush in my hand. The first time I noticed him, it wasn't dramatic. Just a flicker of movement across the courtyard. A man in a white coat moving quickly down the hall, carrying a stack of books. From the corner of my eye, I caught him glance up at my window, his expression caught between curiosity and amusement. I turned back to my canvas, heart fluttering oddly. The next morning, he was there again. This time, he had a notebook. He tapped it gently against the glass and wrote something in big, careful letters. Hi. I froze, staring at the words. I hadn't expected anyone to notice me. I lifted my own notebook from the sill, writing back, Hi. From that moment, the courtyard became our world. Every morning, I'd catch him before he left for the hospital, and he'd catch me before I started my sketches. Notes were exchanged like secret letters in a storybook, sometimes one word, sometimes full sentences. Your paintings are beautiful, he wrote once, and my cheeks burned. I wasn't used to compliments, especially not from strangers. I scrawled back, Thank you. Your notes make me smile. It was strange, comforting. A rhythm developed. I'd paint, he'd leave notes, and slowly, the notes became our voice. We shared dreams through the glass. My longing to have a gallery show. His hope to finish med school without losing himself to the stress. I learned about him in fragments. A medical student living in the apartment across mine. Dedicated, driven, serious. But funny, too. A note saying, You make me look forward to the mornings made me laugh more than it probably should have. Sometimes I caught him watching me as I painted. Head tilted, absorbed. I wanted to speak to him, to tell him what his notes meant, but the words felt heavy, awkward. Our language was in ink and paper, gestures and smiles, and it was perfect that way. Then one rainy afternoon, everything felt different. The city glistened, the streets reflected the lights like silver rivers, and I found a note slipped between my notebook pages. Would you like to meet for coffee? My heart jumped and I hesitated. Meeting meant breaking the spell, stepping out from behind the protective glass. But the idea of finally seeing him, speaking with him, was thrilling. I scribbled back quickly, yes. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, heart still thudding. I didn't know what to say when I saw him in person. Would it ruin the quiet magic we'd built? Or would it make everything more real than I'd ever imagined? Somewhere in the city, he was probably thinking the same thing. Have you ever felt a connection with someone before speaking to them? Would you dare to meet them in person? Or keep the magic in notes? The morning of our coffee date, I woke up with a nervous flutter in my chest, the kind you get when you're about to step into something completely new. I dressed in something simple, a soft sweater, jeans, and carried my notebook with me, just in case I froze, just in case words didn't come out right. When I reached the little cafe across the street, I spotted him immediately. He was already there, sitting by the window, hands wrapped around a mug, staring out at the light reflecting off the rain-slicked streets. He looked calmer than I expected, more grounded. But when he saw me, his eyes softened, and that small, knowing smile appeared. Hi, I said, voice catching slightly. Hi, he replied. And just like that, everything seemed ordinary, though my heart refused to calm down. We ordered coffee. Mine was black, his a latte, and slid into the quiet corner of the cafe. For a moment, we just sat, glancing at each other, sipping our drinks, like testing the water before jumping in. Finally, I reached into my bag and pulled out my notebook. I didn't want to ruin our thing, I said, flipping to a blank page. Writing notes is easier for me sometimes. He laughed softly. I know. I was wondering if you'd want to try talking, but this is fine too. He grabbed a napkin and scrawled something quickly. We can take it slow. I smiled, a genuine one that reached my eyes. It felt right, like stepping into sunlight after being inside for months. We shared pieces of our lives through notes first, my favorite painting techniques, his crazy shifts at the hospital, the tiny victories and defeats of each day. And then gradually we began talking. Just small things at first, words careful and slow, letting the other fill in the gaps. You paint a lot, he said, watching me doodle lightly in the margin of my notebook. Even when you're nervous? Especially then, I wrote, laughing. It helps me breathe. And just like that, the conversation started flowing. Words, laughter, small silences that didn't feel awkward, moments when we simply watched the rain outside, feeling connected without needing to fill the air. By the end of the coffee, I realized that seeing him, speaking to him, hadn't ruined our little window world. It had expanded it. What was once ink and paper now included glances, smiles, and touches of hands as we passed sugar packets across the table. Walking back to our apartments, I felt lighter. The courtyard looked different somehow, warmer. I imagined our notes waiting for the next morning, but now I knew the person behind them, knew the voice that would finally speak the words I'd been imagining all this time. And maybe, just maybe, it didn't matter that he was just a few feet away all along. Have you ever met someone you'd only known from a small connection, notes, messages, or brief glimpses, and felt like you already knew them? Would you take the risk of meeting in person? After our coffee date, everything felt brighter. The courtyard wasn't just a space between buildings anymore. It was a canvas where our lives quietly intertwined. Every morning, I painted with more focus, more energy, as if the city itself was urging me to capture the little magic we'd started. He began leaving notes again, but this time they weren't just words. Sometimes sketches, a tiny heart in the corner, a doodle of a coffee cup, little symbols that made me laugh. I responded with small paintings in my notebook, colors spilling across the page, swirls of blues and golds and pinks. Our messages were no longer just communication. They were art. One rainy afternoon, I set up my easel on the balcony. The clouds hung low over Boston, the streets glossy and silver, and I wanted to capture the city in its quiet melancholy. I heard a knock on my window and turned to see him holding a palette of paints. I thought you might like some company, he said. His smile reached his eyes this time. Not just polite, but warm. I laughed softly. Are you suggesting we paint together? In the rain? He grinned. Why not? We spent the afternoon leaning over my balcony, dipping brushes into paint, trying to capture the reflections of the city. Sometimes our elbows touched and we laughed, pulling back quickly like teenagers caught in something sweet and forbidden. Other times, our hands hovered close over the same palette, brushing against each other accidentally on purpose. When we finally stepped inside, the room smelled like wet paint and hope. He gestured toward my notebook, and I handed it over. On the first blank page, he wrote, I like this. I like us. My chest tightened. I flipped a page, scrawling quickly. Me too. But will it stay just like this? He shrugged, half smile teasing, but eyes serious. I don't know, but I want to try. I nodded, heart pounding, realizing that this fragile connection, built on distance, notes, and tiny glimpses, had grown into something real, something tangible, something I wanted to hold on to. That night, lying in bed, I traced the edges of the notebook with my fingers. I thought about how strange it was that two people could share so much without speaking, without touching. Yet here we were, connected in a way I couldn't quite explain. I knew this was only the beginning. The notes, the sketches, the coffee dates, the stolen glances, they were all just pieces of a larger story we were writing together. And for the first time in months, I felt like I belonged somewhere, not just in the city, not just in my apartment, but in this quiet, unfolding bond between us. Boston outside my window felt alive in a new way. Each drop of rain, each flicker of light, a reminder that some connections don't need words to exist. Some hearts speak louder in silence than in sound. And maybe, just maybe, this silent language we had built would carry us further than I ever imagined. Have you ever built a connection with someone without speaking? Do you think silence can sometimes say more than words? Weeks passed, and our morning note routine became sacred. I'd paint, he'd leave messages, and somehow, between brushstrokes and doodles, our worlds collided. But there was one thing neither of us had done yet, really talked face to face. Not in a rushed coffee moment, not with sketches between us, just a conversation, uninterrupted, where the words would flow freely. One evening, the city stretched golden in the fading sunlight. I was finishing a piece for a gallery submission when I noticed him standing in the courtyard, notebook in hand, watching me paint. He waved, and I waved back, feeling my heart skip. I climbed down the stairs to meet him halfway, notebook in tow. He smiled, eyes lighting up, and I realized how much I'd been craving this. Not just his notes, not just glimpses, but his presence. I thought we could try talking tonight, he said softly, almost shyly. I nodded. Yes, I think it's time. We found a bench near a fountain, the city noise fading behind us. He handed me his notebook, and for a moment, I wondered if we'd even need the words. But then he opened his mouth and spoke, and the sound of his voice made something flutter deep inside me. Your paintings, he said, they make me see the city differently. I blinked, smiling, trying not to blush. And your notes, I said, they make me see you differently. I don't know how to explain it. He laughed softly. You don't have to. I feel it too. Every morning, every little note, I feel connected to you, like we've been speaking this language, only we understand. We talked for hours, sharing small details, stories of our childhoods, dreams, fears. His voice was calm, warm, grounding. I found myself speaking more than I expected, words tumbling out like water finally released from a dam. I learned about his struggles in medical school, the long hours, the sacrifices, the moments of doubt. And he listened to mine, my art, my ambition, the uncertainty of trying to make my voice heard in a city that sometimes felt too loud. At some point, I realized we had forgotten the notebooks entirely. Words had come naturally, spilling out in conversation, laughter, and shared silence. And in that silence, I felt more connected to him than I ever had through notes. As the sun dipped below the skyline, painting the courtyard in oranges and pinks, he reached for my hand. Not asking, not daring, just holding. My heart stuttered, but I didn't pull away. I think, he said quietly, that this, whatever we have, it's real. I nodded, squeezing his hand. It is, and I don't want it to be just notes anymore. That night, as I climbed the stairs back to my apartment, I glanced at his window. He waved, notebook closed, smile wide. I waved back, knowing the silent bond we'd built had finally found its voice. Have you ever experienced a moment when someone's words, or even their presence, made you feel more connected than anything else before? Would you risk revealing your feelings after weeks of silent connection? After that evening, everything changed. The courtyard still held our notes, but now they felt like punctuation in a conversation that had finally begun. Every morning, I painted while he stood below, but now we spoke, laughed, and sometimes even argued softly about colors or the way light hit the buildings. One morning, I caught him trying to balance a coffee cup on the edge of the fountain while sketching on his notebook. I couldn't help but laugh. You're going to spill that, I said, pointing. He glanced up, eyes sparkling. And ruin the perfect sketch? I shook my head, grinning, but my heart did that stupid flutter again. Somehow, in these little moments, I felt closer to him than I had with anyone else in years. We started sharing more than just small stories. He told me about the nights he felt completely alone in the hospital, the long hours, the pressure. I shared my insecurities about painting, about whether anyone would ever truly see me, not just my work. And somehow hearing him, speaking with him, made everything seem lighter. Then came the rainy day when the city turned silver and reflections danced on every street. I had my easel set up, brushes in hand, when he tapped on my window, not with a note this time. He gestured for me to come down. I hesitated, heart racing, but curiosity won. I grabbed my coat and stepped into the courtyard. He handed me a small umbrella. I figured we could paint together, even in the rain, he said. We laughed and ran for cover under a small canopy, brushes and palette in hand. The rain painted the city with its own colors, and we tried to capture it. Every stroke, every laugh, every accidental brush of hands made the day feel magical. When a stray drop of paint landed on his sleeve, he looked at me, and we both burst out laughing. That laughter, light, unrestrained, full of life, became our shared language, a melody that didn't need words. By evening, we were drenched, muddy, and smiling like kids. And yet, I felt something deeper, a quiet certainty. The bond we had built through notes, through silent observations, had blossomed into something tangible, something I could feel, not just see. As we packed up our supplies, he reached for my hand again, this time intertwining fingers with mine. You make this city feel different, he said softly. You make it feel alive, I whispered back, and it was true. With him, Boston was no longer just brick and rain. It was color, laughter, warmth, and hope. That night, I wrote in my notebook before sleeping, I don't want to go back to silence. Not with him. And somehow, I knew he was thinking the same thing. Probably writing the same words in his own notebook, maybe smiling as he read them, knowing we had created something rare and beautiful together. Have you ever found someone who made ordinary moments feel magical? Would you take the leap and let that connection grow, even if it scared you? The rain didn't stop us. If anything, it became part of our routine. Painting in the courtyard, sharing laughs, exchanging glances that lingered just a little too long. It all felt alive, like the city itself was conspiring to bring us closer. One evening, after a particularly long day, I was finishing a portrait of the fountain, the rain tapping rhythmically on my umbrella. He appeared, drenched but smiling, notebook in hand. You left me a note, I said, laughing, saying you wanted to try something bold today. What is it? He grinned, eyes sparkling. Bold enough to finally speak about something personal. My chest tightened. He never shared personal things lightly. I set my brush down and gave him my full attention. He hesitated, then said softly, I look forward to these moments more than anything. Not just the painting, not just the notes. You. My heart skipped. I wanted to respond with words, but words felt heavy and inadequate. Instead, I reached for my notebook and wrote, I feel the same. Every day, every note, every glance. He smiled, leaning closer. And maybe we don't need to hide behind the glass anymore. Time slowed. I felt his hand brush against mine. Tentative, almost testing the waters. I didn't pull away. Instead, I let our fingers intertwine, a silent confirmation that this bond we had built was no longer just notes and sketches. It was real. For the first time, the courtyard felt like our own private world. Rain splashed around our feet, brushes forgotten, notebooks closed, and all that remained was the electricity between us, a quiet storm that matched the weather. We spent hours talking after that, not just notes, not just sketches, but real words, confessions, fears, dreams. I told him about my childhood, about the nights I stayed up painting until the city was silent. He shared memories of his own struggles, the pressure of med school, the loneliness behind the white coat. Somehow knowing each other this way made everything softer, warmer. He wasn't just the guy across the courtyard with a notebook anymore. He was him, real, imperfect, beautiful, and I realized I was falling, slowly, undeniably, completely. When the rain finally stopped, we sat in the quiet afterglow, dripping wet, brushes abandoned. He leaned his head toward mine, and for the first time, we spoke without notes. Words tumbled out, laughter bubbled up, and the silence between us was filled with something electric, unspoken, yet undeniable. As I climbed the stairs to my apartment that night, I held my notebook close, not needing to write a single word. The feelings, the connection, the warmth, it was all there. And I knew he felt it too. Boston had given me rain, paint, and a city to call home. But he had given me something more, a connection that spoke louder than words ever could. Have you ever let someone see your heart slowly, moment by moment, without words? Could you trust that kind of quiet intimacy? A week later, my phone buzzed with a message from the gallery I'd applied to months ago. I almost didn't dare to open it. When I finally did, my heart skipped. We'd love to feature your work in our upcoming exhibition. I couldn't stop smiling. I wanted to call him, shout the news across the courtyard, but instead, I grabbed my notebook. A quick note. I got in. The gallery wants my work. Within moments, his response appeared. I knew you could do it. I'm so proud. I leaned back, absorbing the feeling. This wasn't just about art or gallery acceptance. It was about having someone who truly saw me, someone who believed in me, even when I doubted myself. When I met him that evening, I could barely contain my excitement. I got the gallery, I said, practically bouncing. I can't believe it. He smiled, his eyes shining. You did it. I saw it in you all along. Every stroke, every note, every little late night you painted. It was all heading here. We spent the night sketching, talking, laughing. I told him all about the pieces I wanted to exhibit, the feelings behind each stroke. He listened intently, adding small suggestions, sharing perspectives, never overshadowing me, just enhancing the excitement I already felt. Then he scribbled something in his notebook and handed it over. Promise me something. I raised an eyebrow, taking the paper. What? Promise me you'll keep painting, no matter what. Even when life gets messy, even when I'm not around. I smiled, touched by the sentiment. I promise. He took my hand and squeezed gently. You inspire me too, he said softly. Not just with your art, but with how you see the world. I want to be around that, always. That night, Boston felt different. Not just the rain-soaked streets or the flickering lights in the courtyard, but the city itself seemed to recognize that something magical was happening between us. I realized our notes, our quiet moments, our shared laughter and rain-soaked afternoons, they weren't just fleeting. They were building a foundation, a connection that was stronger than distance, stronger than silence, stronger than fear. Later, as I set up my easel by the window, he appeared below, notebook in hand. But this time, there were no words. He simply held up a small card. Gallery opening. You, me, celebration. I smiled, heart fluttering, and waved. He waved back. I knew, in that moment, that this was the start of something bigger than either of us had imagined. Something real, something worth every note, every brushstroke, every quiet heartbeat in the courtyard. The city was ours, and somehow, so was each other. Have you ever had someone cheer for you in a way that made you believe in yourself more? Would you share your biggest dream with someone you trust completely? Not every day could be perfect, I learned. Sometimes even the closest bonds face shadows. It started subtly. I left a note by the courtyard window one morning, asking if he wanted to meet later for coffee and painting. When I came home that evening, he wasn't there. And there was a note on my notebook, written quickly, almost hurriedly. Can't. Busy. I frowned. Busy? That wasn't like him. Usually, even when swamped, he'd scribble something small, a smiley face or a heart, letting me know he thought of me. This felt different. The next morning, more of the same. He was distant, appearing only to wave from his window. No sketches, no notes, no laughter. My heart sank, but I didn't dare reach out, afraid of imposing, afraid of misunderstanding. By the third day, my anxiety had bloomed into a knot in my chest. I wrote a long note, leaving it by the window before heading to the studio. Are you okay? Did I do something wrong? Hours passed, no response. I couldn't focus on my paintings, couldn't breathe right, and every time I looked toward his apartment, I expected to see him, but he remained absent. Finally, that evening, he appeared, but something was different. He held his notebook tightly, almost defensively, and his smile was cautious, not the easy warmth I was used to. I didn't mean to worry you, he said quietly, flipping open the notebook. I'm sorry, I had to stay late at the hospital. The ER was intense. I exhaled, relief flooding me, but also a pang of frustration. You could have left a note, anything. I was worried. He nodded, looking down at his hands. I know, I didn't want to bother you with the chaos. I thought silence might be better. It took a long moment for me to respond, and then I scribbled. Silence isn't always better. I need you here, even in chaos. He met my eyes then, and for the first time in days, the tension melted. He reached for my hand, holding it gently. I'll do better, I promise. I don't want to hurt what we have. I smiled, squeezing his fingers. I don't want to lose this connection, not even for a day. We sat together in silence for a while, watching the city lights flicker, the courtyard glisten with rain. The misunderstanding had been minor, but it reminded us how much we needed each other. Not just in notes, not just in sketches, but in presence. And somehow, the tension made our next moment sweeter. Every glance, every touch, every quiet laugh felt more precious. The distance had been temporary, but the bond it strengthened was permanent. That night, as I climbed the stairs back to my apartment, I realized something important. Love, even silent love, isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, even when it's messy. And we were finally learning how to do that, together. Have you ever misinterpreted someone's silence or absence? Would you confront them, wait patiently, or assume the worst? The night of the gallery opening arrived faster than I expected. My heart raced as I walked into the elegant space, the walls lined with my paintings, colors reflecting every late night, every quiet morning, every note exchanged with him. Boston outside shimmered like a promise, lights flickering in the distance, but inside, the room held a world all its own. He was already there, waiting by my favorite piece, a large painting of the courtyard, the rain-slicked fountain, and the windows where our notes had started it all. When he saw me, his eyes lit up, and I felt that same flutter I'd felt the first time I noticed him across the courtyard. You look amazing, he whispered, and for the first time, I didn't need a notebook to understand him. I smiled, warmth spreading through me. So do you. The evening buzzed with conversation. Visitors admired my paintings, asking questions I answered with a growing confidence I hadn't known I had. Every compliment made me think of him, his support, his notes, his belief in me when I doubted myself. At one point, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned to see him holding a small notebook. Open it, he said softly. Inside, a single note. You're brilliant, and you make life brighter. Always. My chest tightened. I wanted to speak, to say something profound, but words failed me. Instead, I nodded, letting my eyes convey everything I felt. He smiled, stepping closer, and for a brief moment, it was just us in the gallery, the world shrinking to the space between our eyes, our hands, our hearts. Later, we stepped outside onto the quiet streets. The city hummed softly around us, lights reflecting in puddles like tiny galaxies. He took my hand, intertwining fingers with mine, and I realized this was more than notes, sketches, or late-night paintings. This was real. I wanted you to see all this. Your art, your talent, he said, his voice low and tender. And I wanted to see you, fully, not just in notes or sketches. I squeezed his hand, feeling my heart swell. You've seen me completely from the very beginning, I said. Through rain, through silence, through every little note. I feel the same way about you. We stood there for a long while, just holding each other, letting the city witness our quiet triumph. The gallery, the courtyard, our notes, they had all led to this. A moment where silence no longer defined us, but love did. And in that moment, Boston wasn't just a city anymore. It was a canvas, a gallery, a place where hearts could speak louder than words ever could. Have you ever shared a dream with someone who believed in you completely? Would that trust make your bond stronger? After the gallery opening, life felt different. The courtyard, once our quiet stage for notes and sketches, now held laughter, conversations, and memories that no longer needed to be written down. Our connection had grown from ink and paper to something tangible, a bond that thrived on presence, shared moments, and trust. We continued our routine, but now it wasn't just about painting or exchanging sketches. It was about living alongside each other, understanding, supporting, and celebrating even the smallest victories. I watched him in the mornings as he prepared for his long shifts at the hospital, and he watched me as I set up my easel by the window, colors swirling across the canvas. And every glance, every smile, every touch reminded us how far we had come. One evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, casting golden light across the courtyard, he appeared with a small notebook in his hands. I expected a note, maybe a sketch, but instead, he opened it and spoke, not just writing. I know we've been through silence, through distance, through misunderstandings, but I can't imagine a day without you. You've become my voice, my inspiration, my heart. My chest tightened, tears prickling my eyes. I realized then that love doesn't always begin with words. Sometimes it begins with glances, shared silences, and small gestures that grow into something profound. I feel the same, I whispered. You've been my connection, my courage, my joy. I love you. He smiled, the kind of smile that makes everything else fade away. Then let's promise. No more hiding behind notes, no more silence. We faced the world together. And we did. Boston became more than a city. It became our canvas, a place where two hearts learned to speak a language all their own. We painted, we laughed, we loved, and we built a life in the spaces between the windows, in the quiet corners of the gallery, in the golden light of evening streets. The notes didn't disappear. Sometimes we still wrote, just for fun, little reminders of how it all began. A doodle, a sketch, a single word, a testament to the magic of connection, of patience, of love that doesn't rush but grows slowly, beautifully, like a painting coming to life. And sometimes, when the rain fell, we would step outside, hand in hand, brush a notebook in tow, and remember the first notes we exchanged, the first smiles across the courtyard, the first moment our hearts spoke in silence. Because some loves are quieter than others, softer, slower, but infinitely more powerful. And ours, our silent hearts point, had learned to speak, at last, out loud. Have you ever built a connection that started silently but grew into love? Would you trust it to become something real, even if it began in whispers and notes?